Hello there, this is Draco. During my testing for an upcoming RCQ here in Denmark, I actually managed to do a 5-0 trophy run with Mono Blue Merfolk yesterday. Today we're gonna go over the games. I know we didn't do the recording while we played, but stay tuned here. We're gonna see a lot of cool things. We're gonna see the deck perform really strong. We're gonna see specific, well-intelligent things you have to know. How does Galvanic Discharge work when you, for example, have a Merfolk and you play a Lord? How does that actually work, that interaction? What about layers? What if there's a Dryad of the Elysian Grove in play and you play a Harping of the Seas? How does that actually work? And how do we combat the Boros energy deck, which is the strongest deck? In the final of this modern league here, I actually managed to take down Boros. So let's go over the deck, and then we're going to go through the gameplay, and hopefully you will find this interesting, funny, and also learn a bit. So let's see, first of all, the deck list itself. Actually, I can't take too much credit of this. I'm working from one of the lists that Thierry Folix played and did a trophy run with as well. But I really adore the construction of this list. One of the things that I was a bit worried about is the mana base, as we're running, because now of Sink into Stupor, we're running only 16 lands. This means that we have a really low count of blue producing lands, 4 Sink into Stupor and Flare of the Nile. So Cavern of Souls and Mutavault does not work. So this version has 7, and I was actually in my testing here to try it. Is 7 the right number, or do you have to go down to 6? But it actually seemed to work really well with 3 Caverns and 4 Mutavaults, 1 Minamu, 1 Odrara, and then the remaining islands here. So we don't have Richard and Dockhands in this list. I don't like Richard and Dockhand at the moment. I think it's too slow. I think it does too little. And in comparison to okay, we still need 1-drops. Well, another thing you can be doing on turn 1 is just play the Sink into Stupor tapped. And that's not bad, that's fine. Either Vial, of course, but now this deck is running 4 Silvergill Adepts. This is to play with Flare of the Nile. One of the things that I found interesting, also looking into when I watched Aspiring Spikes run with Modern Merfolk, he also said that people are complaining about Silvergill Adept because Ren and 6, because Orcish Bowmasters, but you can play around that. You just need to be aware that what decks you're playing against. And Silvergill Adept with Flare of the Nile, that's the best target you have for a Sack Outlet, because it replaces itself. All 12 Lords, 2 Tricksters, and then I love this split here that Thierry Folix did. 3 Tidebinders, all 4 Harbingers, and the 2 Sverloons. This means that now we have 9 3-drops on for Either Vial, which means that now it actually is profitable for us to go up to 3. It used to be a couple of years back that you never really wanted to move Either Vial above 2, but now it's very, very correct most of the time to do that as well, because you have a lot of 3-drops now. You can play with Either Vial. 2 Force Negations and 4 Sink into Stupors. Notice only 2 Sverloons. It's still a great card, but there's a lot of other things you can be doing, and this deck has a lot of interaction. Sideboard, we have a lot against creatures. We have 3 Harbingers, we have 3 Subtleties, and we have 2 Dismembers. We also play, that's some of the things I changed with the list, because I want to play a list that I can play that I have the physical cards for, and I right now only have 2 Chalice of the Void, so I'm playing 2 Chalice here. But he did Relic of Progenitus, and you're going to see this is actually a really good card right now. And then I put in Consigned to Memory, which is a great card as well. But let's look at the games and see how it went. So this is round 1 versus Flame here. And notice that we had a pretty uninteresting starting hand. So just as a general rule for mulliganing, I never really want to mulligan. So I keep every hand that's functional. You need just one land on Either Vial, I'll keep it. So don't mulligan too much this deck. Okay, so this is interesting here. He plays an Arid Mesa and goes to play. You know, I mentioned earlier, okay, so how do we play against with Silvergill Adept? This would be typical just running out the Silvergill Adept, but notice here that we actually draw a Lord of Atlantis, and now playing Lord of Atlantis actually makes more sense, because we could be up against a Ren 6 deck here and don't want to just get the Adept killed off the bat right away. So actually it is better for me to lead with the Lord. You don't have to lead with Adept, it will make its contribution later. And now notice here what happened. he played a Galvanic Discharge and saved 1 energy. And that's the power of this card, Galvanic Discharge. That you can actually, you play it, and then you can see, okay, this guy only has 2 power, so I only need to use 2 energy, and I save up 1 point of energy. This card is really, really strong, and we need to learn how to play against that card and how it functions. So I'll come back to that. Okay, notice here that this guy tapped out with 2 of these lands here. So this could again be a situation where you just want to run out either Vial and Adept, but actually this is the kind of time that you really want to make sure that you get the Harbinger out. It's such a strong card against these non-basics. So whenever you have a change, I think one of the most important things is for Modern Merfolk right now is how do you actually play with Harbinger. And I would play it relatively proactively. He also finds it scary, so he will subtlety it. And I can totally agree with that line. I put it on top because I just need the Harbinger back here. So we go to Flamel 88. He goes to his turn and passes. So notice here that he plays the Arid Mesa, and this is of course interesting. One of the things that Harbinger is cool against is fetch lands because it takes out fetch lands, but he can then now in response crack the fetch land and find a basic mountain and kill off the Harbinger. So we need to evaluate what we're going to do here. So instead of playing the Harbinger, we just play the Either Vial and hold up Tishan's Tidebinder, hoping that he'll crack the fetch. Remember, Merfolk is not an aggro deck. We actually need to understand that we are a tempo deck, and here we don't have any pressure to aggressively force the action. So just pass here, seeing that if he'll crack the Arid Mesa, we can just Tishan's Tidebinder the Arid Mesa. And we do have Either Vial that'll gain value at some point here. So he passes, he doesn't crack, we don't play anything, we just relax here. We are not in a rush, we are rarely in a rush. Now we draw a Hexcatcher, which is also fine. But again, we want to pass. He still does not crack the Arid Mesa. He passes to us. And now we consider playing out the Hexcatcher, but again, we don't do it because we are not in a rush. And next turn, we will get the Either Vial up to 3. Now we draw a Sing into Super, and no rush to play that either. It's a great card. Let's just use it as value. And again, we just pass here. This is actually a really interesting stall situation, but we get a little bit of value. We can play out an Adept. So now we actually have pressure. And we draw the Mutavault, which is also a fine draw. We put up the Either Vial to 3 because now we have Tishan's Tidebinder and Harbinger that we can play. But also right now we have Sing It to Super Live that we can also cast from our hand while also casting Hexcatcher. This is actually a pretty fine situation. And now we can start doing some damage. He still does not crack the Arid Mesa. Maybe he's afraid of the Tishan's Tidebinder. But he's also kind of stuck on lands here. And we can play the Hexcatcher, but we choose not to. Again, not in a rush. We have Sing It to Stupor. We have Tishan's Tidebinder. We are doing pressure. And now we also have Either Vial on 3. And great draw with the Svaelun. We don't want to activate the Mutavault either because we simply have a lot of things we can cast here. So now instead we can put in the Svaelun, and it can be indestructible, and we want to force that action. So now we also play the Hexcatcher. Now he cracks the Arid Mesa, and now we can play the Tishan's Tidebinder. He does have a subtlety for the Tidebinder, so we can't ruin the Arid Mesa fetch. That would be a nice play though. But we do have a really good board, and now we untap in our turn with Sing It to Stupor. And this is one of the situations where it's pretty nice just to play out the Harbinger at this moment. He can subtlety it, but we can here we have a lot of things we can do. And we choose to Tidebinder, targeting not the evoke, but the intelligibility of the subtlety, so it doesn't do anything. He can play dress down, and we can even sink into Stupor the dress down. So notice how he played really patiently and suddenly deployed a lot of threats, and he's on 14 life, but now he has to concede, and this game is absolutely over. Okay, next game against this guy, we're up 1-0 against Flamel. Again, keep this hand. It's not impressive, but we do have 2 lanes here, and one of the things we can do is that we can just here play out the Tide Shaper. I like to do that against blue decks because now we just have a way of putting pressure on with our 2/2. He just plays past the turn again. We draw a Mutavault, but we rather want to have the ability of playing Master, so we can put more pressure on. And this is a good board. So we can just aggress here. Notice that the energy decks are running hot. There's a lot of energy decks right now. A lot of cards came from that set, and now he's going to play this Wrath of the Skies, Wrathing of Board. This is of course not good, but part of the game, and that's fine. Now we have Flare of Denial up, but we can't really use it that much. But we're going to play Harbinger. We have 2 Harbingers here, so I think it's fine. And this is also going to put him off red for Galvanic Discharge, hopefully. That's our game plan here. And notice that it did, because he only has Steam Venting in play. And now we can untap with the Harbinger in play. We can attack, we can protect it with Flare of Denial and Tishane's Tidebinder, so we are not in a hurry here. But we still choose to play at the Added because he is kind of stuck on lands, and actually we drew a Tide Tipper as well, so great board again now. We have 6 power on the board. He plays a Scalding Tarn, and now he can Supreme Verdict, so that's not good, but again, that's his one sideboard, one of Supreme Verdict, so that's of course unfortunate, but we can come back here with the Sphere Loom. Notice that if he plays anything here, I was also hoping that it would be Wrath of the Skies, not Supreme Verdict, because we could have countered it with Flare of Denial, sacking the Added, but that was not on our side here. Okay, so he just passes the turn. We have a Sphere Loom up and running. Just want to attack with the Sphere Loom first to see if anything happens. We get to attack, and we get to draw a card, and now we want to put more pressure on, so we start applying the Harbinger. He doesn't do anything about that. We play the Tide Shipper. That could be sequenced differently, but I also want to see what happens when we just play the Harbinger down. Maybe that costs him off some mana. Notice here he taps totally out for a big spell. And this is where we have the Flare of Denial, which is a great card. Never sleep on that card. People can talk all they want, but we are a Merfolk. It's a tempo deck. We want to just Wrath of the Skies for 5, but you can just sack the Tide Chipper, and now we are in total control. We even draw another Flare of Denial. We can hit it for 5, he goes down to 3, and we even have a Tidebinder we can play an instep for lethal for next turn. So never sleep on Flare of Denial. This is a great card, and you want to be aggressive in how to sacrifice your creatures to be able to stop dangerous spells. Let's go to the second round. Okay, round 2, and we have a hand again, kind of boring, but it's fine. We have 2 lanes, we have Silvergate Adepts, we have a couple of folks, so this is a keeper. This guy plays Shifting Woodland. Don't sleep on this card. This is one of the most important cards that came out of Modern Horizons secretly. So this you are able to now use something from the graveyard. And this deck you see here with Planet Genesis, and this is one of the decks that's really rising in popularity with a lot of the Modern Horizons cards. But this Shifting Woodlands is important because it will take a permanent. It can copy a permanent. It can become a copy of a permanent from your opponent's graveyard. So we need to be aware of the power of this card. And now look at this. He plays Primal Fears, and we can Flare of Denial. Primal Fears is the engine card in this deck because it allows him to play a lot of cheap creatures for energy and regain the energy really fast and get card advantage. So this is an engine card for this deck. The point of the deck is that it plays a 1/3 blue card, and then it plays this elephant, and the elephant, mammoth or whatever, comes back to hand, and then they draw a card. I can show that later. So really important to get Primal Prayers out of that because that's the engine card for this one. So we just sack the Adept and for the Flare of Denial, and that's absolutely fine. We still have 5 cards, and now we can actually resolve a Harbinger again, which is great now because now his lands are just so out of the way. But here you can see he just plays 2 of the Doorport Mage, and that's the card I mentioned. Whenever one or more other creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, so bouncing it back to hand, they draw a card. And that card is of course kind of annoying, but we do have a Hex Catcher here, and that means that we can attack in. I don't think you want to block, but now then we just pass because we have Hex Catcher and Trickster up. And notice here he plays the combo here. This is actually quite interesting. So the combo is that he has these 2 guys, and now he can play the Green Belt Rampager from Kaladesh. And when that enters, you pay, it's a 1 mana 3/4, but the point is that you do it without any energy, so it just goes back to hand. And then you get 1 energy. So you get 1 energy, but because of the Doorport mages, you can also draw 2 cards. We don't have a great answer for this. I don't want to counter it with Flare Denial, but we can limit a bit his value by trickstering one of the Doorport mages. So that's the line we're going to take. And you can see here now we tap that, so it doesn't work, and now he only gets to draw 1 card. That's fine. We don't have to worry too much about it. And then he can play another Doorport mage because that's the card he just drew, and that's fine. We can play down the Hexcatcher here in end step. And now we have a decent board again with 3 freeze against his 1/3. And now, great draw. We draw the Master of the Pure Trident, which means that now we can start pushing in with the 4/4s and putting him on pressure. This is one of the situations where we want to put pressure on. We even attack with the Hexcatcher here. And he let that through because we have Island Walk now. So we can attack with everything. He's on 2. He played the Green Pyramid to draw into a solution. That's fine. We rather want to counter the solution than the drawing part. So he draws 3 cards, plays a mountain, and then he concedes. So this is again the power of Harbinger being so strong. Okay, so we up 1-0 against Dr. Drop here. We draw again. This is one of the lands I was talking about. This is not a good hand. You're on the draw with either Vialed and Moonvault. And I just say, I don't want a mulligan. Everything may have something somewhat functional. I just don't mulligan. This deck does not mulligan well. We have a lot of where we cast with 2 for 1 ourselves. And so in general, do not mulligan unless you have a totally dysfunctional hand. This should be, if this was not a land, I'd mulligan. But this is bare minimum. I can work with this. And we are lucky we draw a land right away, so that's easy to say now and then. But it's still a correct keep, I would say. Yeah. He finds the commercial district to surveil Malevolent Rumble into his yard. Misty Rainforest. Notice that people are finding more and more basics because of Harbinger. So one of the things you could be doing sometimes is you can side out the Harbingers. I rarely do that because it's so strong, but it's a great effect because now they actually want to do something. And here we just try to keep him off red. That's absolutely fine. So we can just Tidechipper the commercial district. He plays Planet Genesis to find lands, and he finds the foothills, and he just passes turn. It's fine here. We're not in a rush. Not the right land to draw, but it's okay. It's a land. Rather want to be able to play at it and use either for something else. Hopefully, I was hoping to draw another land here, but that's fine. He uses Galvanic Discharge, and notice here. Notice what happened here. That was really important. So what happened was that he uses Galvanic Discharge and he targeted the Tidechipper, and we did have the Ether Vial for 2. He noticed that as well. So because of that, he chose to use all 3 charge counters to deal 3 damage, which meant that the Tidechipper would never be able to survive even with a Lord of Atlantis in play because it does 3 damage. But important note about Galvanic Discharge. This card is technically worded in a weird way, and you need to understand this because you cannot interact with the effect like this. It works the way that first of all you play the card and you target the creature, then I get to act, and then I can tap either Vial and put in the Lord of Atlantis. But then he knows that he can use 3 energy counters, and then he can choose 3 energy counters. As soon as he gets the choice of 2 or 3 energy counters, he can just choose the right number and the creature dies right away. So I cannot interact with him choosing 2 counters for 2 damage and then putting a Lord of Atlantis. That doesn't work. That's the way it's worded. That's the way Galvanic Discharge works. So just understand that when you're up against this card, you cannot save your creatures if they choose 2. That doesn't work, even in paper or whatever. But notice that Dr. Drop does not know that, because he used all of his 3 charge counters. So I'm just happy that this guy does not know how the rule works. And that's fine. He play Prime Press. We can't do anything about this one, because that's kind of annoying. And now he can go kind of off with his combo. Notice again, the combo means that now he gets 2 energy counters, and then he can play the creatures for free. As soon as they are less, he can just pay 1 energy. So he just plays 1 energy to play the Doorport, and then he plays 1 energy to do the Green Pet Ravager. But this is where Dismember is important, because If we just dismember the dashboard, he doesn't get to draw a card. And that's the kind of the whole idea behind him doing this, that he can continuously just draw cards, because he'll get an energy counter as well, but now it doesn't make sense for him to do anymore. So it just goes back to hand. And we can play the Lord now. We could also have Trickster it, but I think it's better to just get it off the board. And we can attack in here. And we have Tidebinder up, and we do have Trickster up. It doesn't change the clock here if you do two more points of damage. That doesn't really matter, because we have also Muttervolds and Tidebinders. So he played Malevolent Rumble. That's fine. And look at here, he plays the Amp-Rap. This is one of the best new cards coming out of Modern Horizons 3. This is a crazy card. But notice that that's really important. When you play against this card, there's two really great effects that it does. You get 2 energy counters, but then if you cast it from your hand, exile the top card from your library until you exile non-land card, and you may cast that card by paying an amount of energy counters equal to its mana value. So great value, but that's part of one sentence, one triggered ability, which means that when we play the Titan's Tidebinder, we can counter both creation of energy counters and also the effect here. So both of the effects goes away. So Titan's Tidebinder is great. It even removes first strike. He Galvanic Discharges, we can't do anything about that. But notice again, he does not know that. So he still uses all of his energy counters to kill off the Lord. And now instead we can play another Lord. Or a Trickster. Actually I think the great play could be to play the Trickster, because then the Merfolk can also attack, but he concedes. Okay, so we're now 2-1 or 2-0 in the league, and we are here right now 2-0. So it's going well. We have a bit of a slow hand, but it's fine. 2 drops, and notice here we can play the Sulfuric Springs as our first play, which is, again, I say, a fine play. It doesn't have to be always an either Vial or a Tide Shaper. So it's absolutely fine just to play this without any drawbacks. Another Shifting Woodland deck. Again, notice this deck, this card is going to be really relevant a lot of the time. I played against it a lot. Notice here what happens. We draw the either Vial. This is also time just to talk a bit about either Vial. Annoying time to draw an either Vial, right? Because now we have a lot of 2-drops. But in general, when I have an either Vial in this kind of situation, I'm not in a rush to get out a Trickster or a Lord here, because he might have had a removal spell. And the either Vial is only getting worse by putting in hand, by sitting in hand here. So actually, even though it's kind of unlogical here, I rather want to just play out the either Vial, because it only gets better when it gets out, and the Lords are going to be relevant later as well. But the either Vial only gets relevant now, so get that out fast. Don't sit there and say, "Oh, that's annoying that I could be able to play a 2-drop." As soon as you have the either Vial here, go for that play instead. And notice here he plays an Amulet of Vigor, so we know it's up against Amulet Titan, and of course we're gonna exile our Force Negation, because that's one of the cards we want to get out of here right away. He plays the Valakut now. So countering here, the Amulet was really good. And we also had 3 Lords, so it's absolutely fine. Good. We put a counter on the either Vial. We draw our Sphere Loom, which is fine. And here, we actually just want to play out the Lord. This is because the Trickster might be relevant later against Dryad, against Primeval Titan, whatever. So I want to keep that card for later and just put out a creature. They don't have that much removal in the deck. And he does have a Boreal Grazer. And look here how they are so awkward without the Amulet. Then they just have these slow bounce lanes. Okay, go back to us. We can put it up to 2. This is one situation where no matter what, he's gonna block. They always block with the Boreal Grazer. It has done its work right now, so I might as well just play the Lord before. But I just still, because of fun, I attack and he blocks, and I put in the Lord, and I get a bit of a giggle out of punching it up to a 3/3. Here I don't see the value of the either Vial that much, so I rather want to just have the Trickster as a potential tool if something goes awry. But that can be argued. Sometimes it's better to just play out the either Vial again. That could have been the play here. So he plays out Dryad, turning everything into islands, and that's interesting. He played the Gruul Turf as well. We can really interact with him right here. That's actually important to know as well. Dryad comes in, and now he can play an additional land each of his turns. I can't interact with the Trickster for lands coming in. So you can't Trickster it down so it doesn't work that turn. He can just play the lands. The lands are faster. So I'm just going to wait with the Trickster and could potentially do that next turn. But what happens here is now that we draw the Harbinger. I mean, I think it's the Harbinger we draw. And we put the Vial up to 3 because of Svealoom, but now we draw the Harbinger. Okay, so what happens here? The Dryad makes all lands he control into every basic land type. So these can be tapped for everything. And that's great. Also, it's still a Gruul Turf, and this is still a Valakut. So this card, yeah, it has a drawback because now our creatures are unblockable, but he's going to combo off soon, so it doesn't really matter. What about Harbinger then? Harbinger turns every non-basic land into islands, but the Dryad of the Elysian Grove makes sure that every his land is, But that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is layers. Layers means that it's when there's an action that has an impact on everything, like a Blood Moon and stuff like that. Let's say that he played a Blood Moon and then I play the Harbinger. Are they mountains or are they islands or are they both? What happens is that it's depending on layers. So when we then play, let's say that it was Blood Moon and then I play the Harbinger, then they all turn into islands because I played the last card. So yeah, this works, that's fine. But when I play the Harbinger, they all turn into islands as well. So that's really, really strong to get out here because it nullifies the Valakut totally. And you see everything is now islands. Doesn't really matter for the attack trigger because they would be unblockable no matter what, but it's really important to do that because it destroys its plan. It also means that I don't really are in a rush to tap down the Dryad, so I actually choose not to. This could be a situation where people typically would do that, but I think it's better not to. And we managed to win the first game against Emerald Titan. And of course, one of the things that we kind of miss here is the sideboarding. I don't want to go into sideboarding strategy for all this, but I could probably do an updated sideboard guide sometime. But in general, I think one of the important things for sideboarding is that you need to understand not every deck you're playing against, but more the dynamics of each deck. There is 10 different energy decks, some more control-ish, some more Boros Aggro-ish. Some have 3 cards, some are... So it's more about understanding the important, especially Modern Horizons 3 cards, and which sideboarding strategy you should deploy for each of those cards. So this guy played an Urzasaga into an Emerald Emitter. This is kind of the best start he could have. But we drew the Tideshipper, which is amazing. And we can play out the Ether Vial, which is also, of course, a good turn 1 play. So the Urzasaga goes up to 2. He can play an Arbor Aggressor and put in, I think it's another Urzasaga. So pretty crazy start from him, but we get to use the Tideshipper now to Stone Rain his Urzasaga. And you want to, of course, make sure that you kill off the most progressed one, especially because we draw another one. So we don't want him to find with the last part of Urzasaga another amulet, because then he can totally go off. So killing off the Urzasaga before it goes to element number 3 is important. And now we can just pass to him with subtlety up. But I think the problem is here that he plays Valakut, and now he has Urzasaga up here. And he passes the turn. Just wanting to, he's just going to create a construct, which is fine. And we want to put up the Ether Vial, and now we want to, of course, Tideshipper away the Urzasaga, which is fine, absolutely fine. But he can create a construct. But this is really good because we avoid him finding another Amulet of Vigor. But he plays a third Urzasaga. That's a lot of Urzasaga. But the good thing here, and one of the things I like again here, is that now we can play the the master, that's fine. We can keep it on 2, and because of the Otavara, we can also hold up a subtlety. We draw another Lord, which is great. Now we just want to have Otavara be a land so we can play subtlety, and then we can attack in with the team here, and having Lord of Atlantis coming in from the Ether Vial. And he's going to block both sides here, and then we can use the Lord to come in and put in a Lord of Atlantis or Master of the Pearl Trident and kind of get him, because now both the Arbol Grazer and the Construct goes away. And now I'm totally fine with my situation. We have a good developed board and we have a subtlety up, ready to counter something. There's a lot of interaction in this deck. It's really nice to see. Even though he has an amulet, we are overwhelming him by tempo. And now we want to go off by playing Azuzu. And of course Azuzu is one of the most important part of his deck, because playing 2 additional lands with Amulet of Vigor and bounce lands, now he can, with that in play, that's part of his calculation. So one of the things we're thinking about here, are we countering this, are we countering the Primeval Titan? But the idea is, I think it's better to stop this card, because it'll screw up his math and make sure that he can't resolve the Primeval Titan, because he needs much more mana than he can produce at the moment. But Subtlety I've also got, it came in from the sideboard, of course, against the Emerald Titan. We want to have that as well. That's really good. And now look at our board. We have a really strong position. We even draw a Tidebinder, which is a nice card to have up and running. And now we can use the Ether Vial to put in the Lord. And I think we are lethal here and manage to beat up on Amulet Titan 2-0. Let's go to the fourth round. Yeah, and we haven't dropped the game yet. So 2-0, 2-0, 2-0. Really, really good. We keep this hand. It's fine hand. And now Sander's Lounge comes in. This could mean anything. But it is an island, so we want to just run out the Tide Chipper. So we have pressure. Another island. He goes for Preordain. Preordain could mean that it's Murktide, where they really want to, continuously play a lot of cheap spells. We can attack here. No reason for me to play the Master at this moment. I think it's better to play the Tide Shaper and try to take him off mana. We do have Harbinger, but I think just play from the current situation. What can I do now to deny him mana? It's better. So the Tide Shaper goes in to counteract the Sander's Lounge. And notice here that he is actually playing pretty well. He is going for basics from the Fetch Lands, because you know that Harbinger is a part of the Merfolk deck. And then he plays Toxic Deluge, which is a great mass removal spell against us. Really, really good card. We untap, and now we get a situation where again we can play the Harbinger. This is the best uses of our mana. It does take him off red mana, but he can still play a 6/6 Murktide. And that's of course not good. And we don't draw land, which was the kind of card we really wanted to have. And then we play the Adept, because we try to draw land, which would be nice, because that allows us to play the Master or a Hexcatcher. And the Master would allow us to come in for 3 damage, which is crucial here, because then 12 and 2 creatures out, and then it would start looking perfect. But he does have the Spell Snare to counter the Adept, which means that we don't get to draw the land and we don't get to play it. So that was a great counter spell from him, and we can't even put pressure on. And now he can play Consider, Surveilling cards away, and Preordain. I'm thinking actually goes kind of off here. And play another Murktide here. So the Murktide grows into a 7/7 or a 10/10, because he can exile 3 spells. And then he has a 7/7 and a 10/10, and he hits us for half our life. And because we didn't have a draw of a land, we couldn't do anything about that. We draw a Sink into Stupor, and this is actually one of the situations where Sink into Stupor is a problem, because if I drew the Sink into Stupor as an island instead, we could have Trickstered and a Hexcatchered, but we cannot do that now, because if we Trickster the 10/10, we'll still die because of the 3 damage we took from the Sink into Stupor. So that's kind of unfortunate. So I could have played both Tricksters as well, and actually that would have probably been the right play to play that, because this is an island, but yeah. We just try to bounce it with that one, and he can Spell Pierce. So here actually playing this one as a land actually would have been a better play, because it would have been an island, and then we could have tricked both of that. That's actually a mistake I didn't see that I made, and it's important to find those kind of things. Harbinger making this and sulfuric springs into an island means that we could have played both tricksters. He couldn't have done anything about that. And then we could have hit him for 4, 5, 6 next turn. But then he would have untapped and still be able to kill us. So probably wouldn't have done anything different. But important to spot the mistakes. Game 2 against Murktide. Grixis Murktide. And here we have a turn 1 sulfuric springs, which is fine. He plays a Thundering Falls. All of these surveillance, they're great. We just play out a Lord here, which is fine. Harbinger came in from the sideboard, which is a decent card against Murktide, because we can bounce back to hand. Now we can play the Harbinger, which is a great card. Now it takes out. Notice here that it also destroys his Scalding Tarn effect here. So because he was greedy with his mana bait initially, I think he needed to find to push the Watery Grave so he could fatal push. But if he played the Scalding Tarn instead, he could have cracked that for a red source or something instead. So maybe that was not intelligent here. We're trying to put in Consign as a test here. That's actually just me testing. It didn't get relevant here, but that's need to test if it makes sense. I don't think it's that good, but it's a test here. So he played down the Snapcaster, and we just kind of tap out the Snapcaster. But because notice here that he might target the Fatal Push, but he can't play it because of the Harbinger. But he could if the Harbinger would have died by blocking here. So instead, I would much rather just tap down the Snapcaster, making sure that the Harbinger does not die to a Snapcaster block. Now we can bounce the Harbinger, but we don't want to do that. I don't think that's worth it. And he's really in trouble with his mana. Only blue sources now. We draw Ether Vial. It's fine. We can play the Ether Vial. He'll counterspell it, and that's perfect because now we can resolve the Swearloon. That was actually my hope, that we can draw the counterspell at this moment of playing the Ether Vial, because that's one of the things he still had left, and I think we really need this Swearloon. We don't want to attack and trade here because Swearloon being indestructible is not irrelevant. So we have time. And he's trying to go for the big Murktide play, but he does not have it. And also Harbinger being able to bounce the Murktide at instant speed while it attacks is really relevant. Now, because the Lord draw is great, we can attack with the team. And he goes down to 6, and we'll just hold up Consign to Memory. It doesn't really matter to have the adapt here. Good, so 1-1 in that game. Let's go to the... So again, Harbinger is such an amazing card. This is actually one of the things that makes Merfolk, in my opinion, really strong at the moment. Relic of Potential is also great. Get that back into your sideboard, guys, and of course against Murktide you wanna have that as available. The Murktide decks are playing this Frog deck, which is what this guy is doing. He's playing with Psychic Frog, the new card, the new Psychotalk-ish card. Which is really good, and that's why the Murktide decks makes a lot of sense, because for Psychic Frog you also want to be able to discard a lot of cards and have cards in your graveyard. So Relic is not irrelevant, and how do we actually play Relic? You just use it continuously, and you really rarely want to crack it. You have to do math sometimes because of Murktide, but in general, as soon as you crack it because you just want to draw a card or whatever, you're really inhabiting, you're removing some of the power of the card, because continues to just having the density of cards in his graveyard being low is important. So I just use it every time I can. Remove 2 polluted deltas out, and now I play out Adept. Polluted delta. And notice here that I think it's still correct to play the Harbinger. Especially now we drew the Fluff Denial, then we can protect it. But we actually play the Master. I actually don't know if that's correct, but I think it's also just to put pressure on. Harbinger could have been a right play here, but he could just have cracked the card anyways. Actually, no, I think that my line here was to say, okay, what do I want him to find with the Polluted Delta? Polluted Delta is the best fetch lane for him because it'll be able to find a swamp. And I can't do anything with a Harbinger. So when I'm on turn 3 and I play a Master, he'll have to crack the... If I played the Harbinger, he could crack it for Swamp, having access to black mana and killing off the Harbinger. But by playing the Master, I signal that I do not have a Harbinger in hand, and now he can crack it for the Thundering Force instead, which means that I can actually, in a later turn, get him off red and black mana. So that was my line here. I had to remember the point that he plays Pyroclasm, and that's one of the situations where, okay, Pyroclasm is a great card, but I think it's a lot better to use the Flare of the Nile in combination with sacking the Silver Ladder. He still gets a 1-for-1, but my problem, if I don't do that, I both my Master and the card I draw, and then I can play the Harbinger next turn, but I do not have Flare of the Nile up anyway, because I don't want to sacrifice the Harbinger. So this one is a situation where, in this case, just give him a 2-for-1 for his Pyroclasm. It sounds crazy, but it's better. And it's actually not a 2-for-1 because of Adept, we drew a card. But I think it's much better to have the card out, playing the Harbinger, and then we can potentially find another solution for an interactive spell. We just keep removing cards from his graveyard, and we don't want to run. Now Krevan was a great draw. He plays the Fatal Push, and now we can play the Harbinger because now it played around a counterspell, but he didn't have Fatal Push, not a counterspell, and now he's screwed again. Flood Stand, he cannot use that, and Harbinger goes to town. And now this is also pretty good because we have Sink into Stupor. He'll cycle the Senna's Lounge. We have Sink into Stupor, and we can play the Master in the same turn. Of course, we want to do that. That's absolutely fine. He plays a counterspell. I actually just let that resolve. I think it's better to see if we can protect the Harbinger with the Sink into Stupor. We are doing damage, so that I rather want to make sure that the Harbinger is under control. Salty is also a great draw. We just keep exiling cards from the graveyard, and now we can play. We both have Subtlety and Sink into Stupor up and running. We're still putting pressure on. No rush here. He bounces it with Otawara, and that's of course a great play. One of the things you can do. We can't Sink into Stupor Otawara. Two.